Today we have a special collector's video starring a bunch of Tamiya's RC cars, all collected by one of AMain Hobbies' own customer service reps of almost 6 years. His name is James, and this is his Tamiya RC collection. Now, Tamiya has been offering RC cars for over 45 years, and they've had a lot of time to expose people to the RC hobby for the first time. Imagine being a kid in the 80s and looking at a brand new Tamiya RC kit. Now, the thing about kids, though, is that they're broke, but eventually they grow to be adults with jobs and money to spend, and sometimes they want to fulfill those childhood passions. And that is the context for this collection. Now we have about 20 different cars here from James. We're gonna try to go through them really quickly, show them off, and mention a few of the cool aspects behind the cars. And as a disclaimer, I'm not an expert in these Tamaya cars. This was a learning experience for me, so I apologize if I get some things wrong. Now up first is the Super Avanti Td4, and this is a pretty recent release. It is a 10th scale 4-wheel drive kit that you need to assemble. It's a mid-motor buggy designed off the Td4 chassis, shaft driven, and retains the slogan, "Being nuts is neat." Now this is an updated version of the older Avanti, and it's just gorgeous. Now up next is the Fighting Buggy, a car that was originally released in 1982, and it was called the Super Champ Buggy, but that was only the USA name. The Japanese naming, I believe, was the Fighting Tiger. That was the original release, although in 2014 the car was re-released and they just stuck with the Fighting Buggy. It is a 10th scale 2-wheel drive kit, and it interestingly uses a single shock in the rear end. It does have an independent suspension all the way around, and it features some really fantastic scale details. It looks phenomenal. Next is the Frog, probably one of the most famous buggies that Tamiya ever released, and it was really popular as a first RC car for so many people. Now, it was originally released in 1983, and then it was re-released in 2016. It is, of course, a 10th scale 2-wheel drive buggy kit. It uses an ABS plastic construction and a rear trailing arm independent suspension with little rubber boots. Now the Grasshopper is next, and it's another first RC for a lot of people out there. Originally released in 1984, it uses a hard plastic body. It has a solid rear axle. It's pretty easy to paint this hard plastic, and it was re-released in 2016, and this is a re-release. Now this is the Hornet, and this is an original Hornet, released in 1984. It is a 2-wheel drive, 10th scale buggy. It has a solid rear axle, independent front suspension, Lexan body, and it came with a mechanical speed control that James still has installed inside the buggy. Now up next is the Wild One, Blackfoot Edition. This particular re-release was released just last year, 2021, but the Wild One was originally released in 1985. The buggy is a 1/10th scale 2-wheel drive kit, and it has a really cool trailing arm rear independent suspension with more little rubber boots over those drive shafts. Now about this car, it is fantastic looking. There are so many little scale details. It just looks amazing. And then one thing that really caught my eye are the rear lugs. Alternate between spikes and lugs, which is not something you see very often, and it's kind of cool. Now this is the Ford Escort MK2 Rally. It's a 1/10 scale shaft-driven 4-wheel drive rally car that uses the MF-01X chassis, which comes in a few different versions with different styled bodies, all with the same chassis as rally cars. Now the intention here is to look like the RAC Rally Champion from 1975 to 1979. This vehicle does come with a pre-painted body, and it looks real scale with scale tires, mirrors, and light buckets. Now that leads us into the Beetle MF-01X Rally, which uses that same MF-01X chassis, but this time with the Beetle body. Now this vehicle is meant to represent the Beetle's presence in racing, which was pretty heavy in the 50s through the 80s, and the body features some chrome bumpers, light buckets, mirrors, and other scale details. This is the Mitsubishi Montero Wheelie. It's a 1/10 scale 2-wheel drive wheelie truck with a hard plastic, comically styled body. Now we have an independent front suspension with a solid rear axle and a wheelie bar back there, and the truck features a scale decal sheet and a spare tire in the back. This is the Mercedes-Benz Unimog 406. It's a 1/10 scale 4-wheel drive limited edition of the Unimog 406 series U900. Now this truck is built on the CC02 ladder frame chassis, and so it features a link suspension, solid axles with working diffs, and it's set up very much like a modern 10-scale trail truck. The truck also uses a separate gearbox and transfer case inside. The body is pre-painted in PS32 Tamiya Corsair paint, and it features many scale details and LEDs included. This is the Farm King Wheelie. It's built off of the WR02G chassis, which is a 2-wheel drive mid-motor setup. It uses a Lexan body with a lot of scale features. There's a hard plastic driver inside that you can paint, and the chassis uses a full independent suspension with a wheelie bar in the back. This is the famous Blackfoot. This truck was originally released back in 1986 and then re-released in 2016, and this is a re-release. It's a 10-scale 2-wheel drive monster truck. It uses the Blackfoot 3 body, and it's mounted on the 2015 re-release Monster Beetle chassis. The truck also has independent suspension, and in the rear end, it's that trailing arm setup with boots over the drive shafts. This big dude is the King Yellow 6x6. It's an 18 scale 6x6 kit that uses the G601 chassis, and it has 6x6 drive via gearboxes with a front, center, and rear diff. Now this vehicle uses a fully independent suspension all the way around. The Lexan body is styled like a school bus, and it even features all-wheel steering if you have a transmitter that can be 4-wheel steering setup. One thing you might notice on this truck is it does not have the original shocks. Now this old thing right here is the main reason James started collecting these vehicles in the first place. After seeing a lunchbox at a hobby shop as a kid, he knew he had to have it one day, which is what has led us here. Now the Lunchbox is a 12th scale 2-wheel drive monster truck, and it was originally released in 1987, and this is a re-release. Now the Lunchbox features the iconic hard plastic boxy van body with metal plated bumpers, grille, side guards, and more. Now the body is a hard plastic design, so it's a little bit easier to paint on your own. The truck has an independent front suspension with a rear solid axle and wheelie bar. And also, the body is screwed onto the chassis for the sides, so it looks more scale realistic. This is the Lunchbox Black Edition. It's the same as the original, just comes with a black painted body and black wheels. This is the Lunchbox Red Edition. It has a red painted body, white wheels, and white plastics. And this is the Gold Edition, perhaps the most sought after Lunchbox there is. It's the same as the original, it just has a gold chromish colored body with matching wheels. I know some of you recognize this truck. It's the Midnight Pumpkin, which was originally released in 1987, and it's a 12th scale 2-wheel drive truck. This uses the same chassis as the Lunchbox, but it uses a 50s style American flatbed truck for an alternate look. The body is hard plastic, and it's detailed with light buckets and chrome parts, and interestingly, the body posts pop up through the body on the sides, so they're not as obvious, and you still get a pretty clean look. This special truck is the Midnight Pumpkin Metallic Kit. It's the same as the original truck, but it comes with a pre-painted chrome body with matching wheels, and it looks fantastic. Up next is the Monster Beetle, which was originally released in the 1980s, and the re-release was in 2015. Now this car features a hard plastic Volkswagen scale body with the driver, the light buckets, and more. With the chassis, it has an independent suspension in the front, independent in the rear, but using that trailing arm rear suspension that we've seen before with rubber boots and all that, same as on the Blackfoot. This is the Monster Beetle Black Edition. Same thing, just slightly different color. You've got a black body, different colored wheels, and the chassis plastics that were previously red are now black. Up next is a big boy, and this is the Bullhead. It is a 1/10 scale, 4-wheel drive kit that's now been discontinued, but it has a body inspired by the American tractor trucks. It is a hard plastic body with metal-plated parts and scale details attached throughout. With the chassis, it's a bathtub chassis frame with a 4-link suspension and a motor-on axle set up front and rear with solid axles used, and it is possible to have 4-wheel steering with the Bullhead. Now last but not least, we have a bit of a mystery car. This is an F1 Tamaya car that James has, and we've Googled it to death trying to figure out what model it is, and we're not quite sure. It's got Goodyear and Marlboro branding on it. If any of you guys out there know what platform this is, it's more of a modern race car, but let us know with a comment down below. Big thank you to James out there for having such an awesome collection and then letting us borrow it too. Thank you, man. If you guys have any questions on any of these Tamaya cars, except this one, go check out the links that we put down below. And if you want more RC, check out these videos.